There you go.
Many of Montgomery's African American residents were politically organized long before Parks' arrest. The Women's Political Council was founded in 1946. It had been lobbying the cities for improved conditions on buses for a decade before the bus boycott began. But on December 1st, 1955, African American Rosa Parks was coming home on Montgomery bus from her job. The boycott was so successful that local civil rights leaders decided to extend it indefinitely. A group of local ministers formed the Montgomery Improvement Association. To support and sustain the boycott and the legal challenge to the segregation laws, Martin Luther King was elected president, and he was new to the organization and had few enemies. Approximately 40,000 African American bus drivers, majority of the city bus drivers, boycotted the system the next day, December 5th. That afternoon, Black leaders met to form the Montgomery Improvement Association. 9 months before Rosa Parks' arrest for refusing to give up her bus seat, 15-year-old Claudette Calvin was arrested in Montgomery for the same act. The city's Black leader prepared to protest until it was discovered that Calvin was pregnant and deemed an inappropriate symbol for their cause. The idea of the boycott had been floating around for months. Both Wixson and Robinson were waiting for a test cast to challenge the segregation bus policy court. They knew that they would have large support from Black women who made up a majority of the bus riders. The only thing missing was a good test candidate and responsible middle-class Rosa Parks, perfect for the role. On Friday, December 2nd, Robinson created a flyer which she distributed to Black families around Montgomery. The flyer told of the arrest of Parks and mentioned that 73% of the bus riders were Black. Many white citizens went against the African American community. King's home was bombed and many boycotters were threatened or fired from their job. Several times, the police arrested protesters and took them to jail, once charging 80 leaders of the boycott with violating a 1921 law that barred conspiracies to interfere with lawful business without just cause. Okay. One of WPC's many jobs was to publicize the boycott. This was done by printing out posters and passing them out throughout the city. Robinson also reached out to other organizations like the NAACP and the Montgomery Improvement Association. Women not only represented leadership in the movement, but they also handled the day-to-day plannings for protesters. They set up a carpool for women working long distance from their homes. Despite constant threats of violence, the boycott lasted for almost a year. Meanwhile, boycott supporters challenged bus segregation in court. Their case, Broder v. Gale, was eventually heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled on November 13, 1956, in favor of the boycott. The boycott ended on December 20, 1956. 381 days after it had began. The buses in Montgomery were now integrated. Rosa Parks lost her job as a tailor's assistant at Montgomery Fair department store. Rosa Parks' husband, Raymond, lost his job as a barber at Maxwell Air Force Base. The boycott's conclusion didn't make it easy for them to go back into earning a living. Parks was too identified with the protest for her or her husband to land a regular job. Parks and her family went to find a job. At first, it wasn't easy, so she went back to Virginia, but when things went wrong, she moved back to Detroit.